and welcome to Conversations with the Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio Live, bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life. We come together each week and we talk about life, we talk about love, and we also talk about spirituality. And we talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? What practices can you use to support you moment by moment? And with so many things going on and so much uncertainty, we need something to support us through it all. Today for me was a day where I guess I spent time. Today is the 1 year anniversary of my baby sister's death. So for me, I had to find places where I felt okay or felt good. I had moments where I laughed. I had moments where I was sad. I had moments where I cried. So through all of that, I allowed myself to be in this day using all the spiritual practices that I had at moments when I needed to, meditation, prayer. I listened to gospel music, but at the same time, acknowledging the feelings. So, as I say, it's great we have these spiritual practices, and the best thing is when we can really use them in the moments that we needed them. So, today for me, I use my spiritual practices to help me feel the joy that I always talk about. One of my goals is to support you in living your best life in joy. So I took some of those practices today and I laughed a little bit and I found joy. So tonight I am here with a very special guest. You met him last week and he's back again today to continue our conversation on manhood in 2022. You can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason, on Instagram as Rev Grenetta, and you can follow me on YouTube. I give you inspirational messages each day, and I hope that I'm supporting you in living your best life with grace and ease. So let's welcome Jarvis Smith tonight, once again, part two. Hey, Jarvis,
What's happening? What's happening?
how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I was excited to have you back again. You know how I was thinking, like, oh, wow, the conversation was so good. I was going to invite you back. And as it turned out, I was able to get you right back to back. So I really appreciate that you are able to show up again tonight and that we can continue this conversation. One of so last week, we talked about a lot of things. I thought it was just like so many things that each topic on its own could be a whole conversation, right? So as I thought about it for the past couple of days, just knowing I would have you back, I tried to think, what were some of the relevant topics we talked about? Because an hour is an hour, right? And we did like this big old thing, right? So
Hmm.
just in trying to structure it and get to a point where we're really sharing something that people can take away, because the idea is to leave people touched, moved, inspired, have them take away something. So when I posted it again this week and I put part two, I saw you posted and said, what, building back our communities
Let's
or
men take back our build our
yeah,
computer back. Yeah, build our
bringing
computer.
back our communities. So that for me, that feels like that's like big picture, right? Bringing back
Mhm.
our community. So if we start up there, how will we break that down? And let's start there and talk about what you meant by bringing back our communities, and let's move from there.
So, um, the times that we speak of prosperity in our communities, those times involved our families being united.
Mm,
Uh, and I think the burden of that lies on us as men. Once again, everything I put out is about us as being better men.
mm,
And I really want to push that idea because it's not just for me to tell someone else. It's for me. I want to be a better man. I want my sons to be better men. I want their sons to be better men, and it will eventually grow in the progression of life, because that's what the purpose of us being here is. So
Mhm.
when I say the community, it starts in the home, but it's not just one home on your street. It's several homes, and if I teach my children and my neighbors teach their children, and the wives are together, and everybody, we had a community back then. And when you have a community, it's always better for the next generation, the group of people. When you have a good community and you go out of town, you cool with telling your neighbors, because they gonna check your mail, they gonna make sure nobody sneaking around your house. But if you got a bad community, you got the emergency lights on, everything. So
Mhm.
I just say that, as far as men, let's get back to doing the things that we need to do to building back our community, being there in the home, being for our families, and it'll just make a lot of stuff I feel we got right now going on in the world. We could rectify with the presence of good men being in their communities.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. When we say take back our communities, what will you say? There's a difference now, and I know as we tell you, what I heard was like then when we were in our communities and we were with each other, and we were sharing. What brought to mind was me, like anybody in our little community could tell what was watching, and if you got out of line, they would tell your parents, or they would tell somebody else that you got out of line, right?
Yeah.
And as I look at all the like violence in the communities now, what we would have to take them back in a way that I'm just trying to think how and what does that look like. And I know a part where you're saying is it up to the men, how do we get to them, and what are we offering them, what will we say, let's take back our community, and why and how, really, right? Is a big question.
So let's rewind to what you just said
Hmm.
real quick. I want to point out something.
Hmm.
What are we offering them?
Hmm.
Uh, you're not offering a man anything. It's
Okay.
his duty.
Mm.
If he feels he deserves some compensation for being a man or taking care of his family, then he's just not fitting the bill. That's not what we're about. You talk to the average father, he's not excited about Father's Day. I don't need y'all to hoop and holler. It's a reason why we get ties and the mothers get trips and diamonds and stuff like that. It's the man. It's not that it's a better circumstance. It's just that men don't care about that. The gratitude of our job comes in the results,
Mm.
of looking back and seeing how things have prospered and how things have grown. If you like a farmer, he gets a kick out of seeing the harvest come in. He wants to see what he's put the work into.
Mhm.
Mechanic, he wants to hear the engine roar on the car he built. Those are the paybacks. So it's not what we can give to them. For one, it's their duty.
Well, okay, let me just say I understand when you use the word it's their duty. So the idea for me is that something is missing and we want to bring it back. So when I say what would be the incentive, what are we talking about bringing back, and how do we get men to embrace building the community, or training their kids? What's the shift that we're looking for, and who are we talking to?
I think we have to get into a mind frame. We've been poisoned, and so what I've been talking about here fits every man, Mexican, white Americans, Native Americans, whatever your particular ethnicity is. But I
Mhm.
can specifically speak to the Black community.
Okay.
We need to get out of the mind frame that what we're hearing. We are good fathers. We are good husbands. We
Mm-hmm.
need to. I think our mind frame is one of the first things we got to get over to get us back into the position that we need to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we have a history that has gotten us away from that, all the way back from the 50s through social service and all those transitions that we went through in America. We have to get out of that. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's time for us to get back into being the man, being husbands, being fathers. And it's all in the mind. What we teach, what we hear, so many young men are hearing, oh, You ain't gonna be none. You just like your dad. This and the third. Such a negative thing, and if the only positive they're hearing is foul language from our music or what they see on TV, we gotta that plays to your mind. So it has to be a positive reinforcement first in your mind. Minds of our young men are so scattered. For real, the minds of our old men are so scattered. It's not even just the young men, I
Right,
got
right,
generations before me that are not
right.
focused. So what I believe is, as a collective, we have to become one in our focus and what is the real goal. What is the true definition of what is important? I think we spoke of last
So,
week. Money's not important.
right,
So
okay.
go
So
ahead.
the movement, what came to mind? So if we say the movement, right, and
Mhm.
as you were saying, the movement will be being to, and I won't say, and I would say enhance is the word I would use, right?
Okay.
Enhance being fathers and husbands, right? For to just improve the experiences of our kids, right? So if we were to really look at what does it mean, so a couple of things come to my mind. What does it mean to be a good husband or to be a husband or a father? But the mindset thing is important because for so long you were told you weren't. And the images that we see, we don't see the good statistics about the black men who are being fathers, the ones who are good husbands. We see the statistics of the ones who are cheating or the ones who don't
Going to
have this or
jail.
the one who don't have that. And
Yeah.
so if so that mindset thing, what I'm saying is that comes from that because what we're seeing. And then if you listen, you mentioned the music, right? I love music. I love all kind of music, right?
Absolutely.
But also, I yeah, it's just so crazy for me, right? When I listen to the music, and I was like, wow. So I diverse, but the whole thing, is the idea of that training. You had said something last week about training preparation for the kids. The men need some training preparation too in order to change that mindset. So where do we start? What do we do? And I think it starts with men like you speaking out about it and having your say, making men feel comfortable to come somewhere and say, yes, I want this. Let's come together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, and I feel like I have a pretty good group of gentlemen who are in my realm, fathers and husbands. The thing about it is, and in the nature of us, we're so quiet about it.
Mm,
Those of us who are setting a real example, we we got to project that because the negativity is being projected.
right.
Like you said,
Mm,
you never hear of the good things that are going on in our community. So you always hear the bad. The news never tells you who made the honor roll.
right.
They tell you three got shot in
Yeah.
Portsmouth.
Yeah.
That's how
Mm,
that happens. Um, so I think we and a friend of mine, he came up with a term. We talked about this. He was some brothers united for manhood. you
mm,
know,
mm,
because we all have to be collected together, the men who we are, and go out and project this image and show this image.
mm, mm,
I think it's one of the things I don't see enough, and I think it's cool to see when you see fathers out with their children. I'm looking around when I smell. I'm always seeing mothers out with their children. You
mm,
rarely see the men out with their children.
mm,
And
mm,
sometimes that's just what we have to do. We have to show that, and if you show it enough, even if another person is in a position where they don't see it and they see us out and they see that image out, it starts to, once again, it plays to the mind. You can't say, well, I ain't never see it. In my particular family, all the men, well, in our family, all the men have somebody.
mm,
So I grew up in a family where all the men were in relationships.
yeah.
I don't have many single. I got a whole lot of uncles running the streets.
No.
I don't. So
Right.
I didn't know it. I didn't know it when I was young, but I was given an education, an
Mm,
unconscious education
mm,
to male behavior because I
mm,
was seeing men in relationships,
mhm,
constantly. And
mhm,
I mean, they may have said and done, how the fellas we in the corner we talking, but what you see
Mm.
plays a big, a
Mm-hmm.
person can tell you they love you, but then they smack you. The actions show differently. So
Right.
the actions that I saw were
Mm-hmm.
men going to be husbands and fathers. So
Mm.
we I think right now we have to project, and that projection will get to change. Like I said, these numbers and the TV and everything, that's just our society. Our society is going to accentuate the negative.
Right, right,
We're Americans.
right.
Love it or leave
Right,
it.
right,
Part of
right.
this is.
Not just
However, um, we in order for us to live like we want to live,
mm-hmm.
we got to push a little change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's just me. I'm with that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that everything that you're saying is great. And how do we move in that direction of getting that change? And I know it starts, as you say, you have a group of people in your world,
Mhm.
that are fathers and husbands that you can go to, talk to, and figure out what you're doing. And Brothers United, that group, I think that's a great idea to figure out how to get out there and show that there are great husbands and fathers in the Black community taking care of their kids. They are not all right out there and not doing that. We you were talking about the mindset and getting into the mindset, and I talked a little bit about training and preparation. One of um, one of the things that I was thinking about is what would it take, to have this shift, you know?
So I don't believe you'll ever see change in a lifetime. I don't think that's possible. I think last week we talked about difference between Harriet Tubman to Martin Luther King to say Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, those are three different lifetimes, and
Mm,
those are also three different changes, all to the same types of people.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right now, with me and you know my friends Matt D, all the guys in my circle, Dirty. I'm sorry, This is how I refer to them.
mm-hmm,
If we have to be the change for this particular time, we may be Harriet Tubman and we not know it. We have to
mm,
start somewhere.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, the goal, the aspiration has to be to have that better. To have better for our children, to have better opportunities for our kids. Because that's what the whole reason we're doing this for. You
mm-hmm,
know,
mm-hmm,
uh, my wife and I often talk what life would be like if we didn't have children, but we don't. So since we do, but we do have children.
right.
We got a lot of them too. But since we do have children,
Mm-hmm,
we have to prepare and work in that movement. And I think that's what we have to do. It's not going to be, well, I'm gonna talk about it this week, talk about it next week, and next year we're gonna have a seminar, and in 2035 we're gonna see a turnaround of fathers at the houses. That's not gonna how it's gonna happen. That's unrealistic.
mm-hmm,
But I believe if we start the conversations now, if we sit and we knock down some of these barriers, there's so many walls that we got to get through first. I think we got to do a whole lot of work before we even get to the point to where we're starting to open up for
mm-hmm,
that. We
mm-hmm,
talking about a lot of therapy because we're still traveling on years and years of baggage. Our
mm-hmm,
fathers wasn't around. Our mothers did this and this and that, which I believe when you get 25, you can't blame your parents for anything.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But not to say that you don't.
Right. I
But we
think people still blaming their parents at 55, right?
no,
But you know
no,
what I'm saying? But
no.
it's a
You've
whole
done all this.
it's the idea of what dealing with, and I had talked about that I think before. It's like the trauma of your childhood, and I believe that all the things that happened to you when you were small and at different points in your life impact who you are now and how your life is playing out for you. So if
Mhm.
you had a lot of trauma at different points in your life that unresolved, right? Because you could have had a lot of trauma, you dealt with it and you resolved it, right? Then you will then be open to experience more and not carry that baggage. Just throw the baggage down, right? But one thing that came to my mind when you were saying at 25, I believe that at different ages, you think about manhood in a different way, wouldn't you say? Because, say, now you're over 40, but at 25, there was a whole.
Yeah,
So, how do
and
you address, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're 40 now, so you got to go down and talk to the younger guy that you used to be, right?
so you know what, and it's crazy you say that. I'm gonna go back probably about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. My wife and my daughters were out. They were going whatever. I don't know what they were doing. It was just me here with my two younger sons, and they're in the room playing the Sega, and the competition is getting heated, and you can hear them, and they in there talking trash and da 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 da, and they going back and forth. Um, and they got a little reckless, with their language and their attitudes. So I went into the room, nothing out of pocket. Just, hey man, listen, I need y'all to kind of, try to give them a better way to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to say these words. You don't have to be this kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't want to break any spirits. I
Mm-hmm.
want that tenacity maintained. I want that toughness, because that toughness is one of the intricate tools of their masculinity. I need them to have a certain kind of rugged behavior to them, because I need them to, that's part of their manhood, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This may sound simple to you, but when we go in the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't be talking. In a public bathroom, men don't talk.
Oh, okay.
And that's just a behavior. It's not saying it's right or wrong. That's
Mm-hmm.
just a common behavior between men. When I'm standing at the stall and I'm doing my thing, and the dude next to me, if the dude come and he start talking, it's awkward. Hey, bro, what's going on with you? Why are you, And that's that's what I now that it may sound silly,
Right.
and it does sound silly, but
Right.
it's a building block in masculinity. It's not
Mm-hmm.
to say that they should be overly dominant or the guy's gay or any of that. No, that's not what it's about. This is a
Mm-hmm.
little steps. I have 11 and a 13-year-old. I'm trying to get them ready to go. They're not ready right now. So in
Mm-hmm.
the little steps, I don't want to take their fire, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to encourage them and teach them better ways. And the same way is for me being at 41 talking to a 25-year-old. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to take his fire. I don't want at 25. You got a lot of vigor. You think you know everything. You can't be broken. You
Mm-hmm.
got all the answers. I don't want to take that from you, but I want to plant a seed that, but so you'll make it to 41. Because if you just run on that vigor at 25, you won't
Mm-hmm.
even see 41. So
Mm-hmm.
that's me. Yeah, for
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I thought of that in talking to different age groups because you have young kids, right? Now, young girls and young boys, right? Do you find that you treat the girls differently from the boys? And
yes.
in what ways?
I treat the girls differently because they are girls, and I
Mhm,
treat the boys differently because they're boys, and that is what the world is going to do. Um, and I have them to understand that, and people may not say it's right,
mhm,
but that's what we live in. Now, if I treat them equally, that
mhm.
will be a conflict as well, because number one, people will say, well, I don't care what people say, but
But
people will say, well, you don't do that to a boy, you don't do that to a girl.
mhm,
And when they leave my house, they would not be prepared, because they'll be under the illusion. My sons would be like, well, my daddy treated me just like he treated my sister, so I can do what my sister does. And my daughters will say, well, my dad held us to the same standard as my boys,
mhm,
so I can do what my boys do. And we see that as a significant problem right now in our community. Boys feel they can conduct themselves in ways that females conduct themselves, and vice versa, and they want to be accepted when it's not a social norm. However, as the one of the root teachers in the household,
Mhm.
me and the mother, if we laying down what social norm, we getting you prepared for, because the whole thing is to get you prepared for social norms.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
they're going to treat men this way, and they're going to treat women this way. Do we like it? Is it fair? Is it right? A lot of times it's not. A lot of times it. Well, I mean, I need to take that back. A lot of times it is. It is fair to an extent,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we're not always going to be comfortable. You can't make everybody comfortable,
Mhm.
but we have to do that. So yes, very much so. I'm telling my girls one a certain way, and I'm
Mhm.
telling my boys a certain way. Now, the baseline ideas of life,
Mhm.
I'm giving it to everybody the same.
Mhm.
Everybody, you got to do, you got to live life the same.
Mhm.
But is it going to treat you differently? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, what came to mind is as a Navy family, right? And your wife was in the Navy and you were in the Navy. I'm trying to think about the differences, as having a female as opposed to a male.
Well, so the Navy, the difference about the Navy is the military as a whole. The
Mhm.
military is separate from society. So the military can make standards separate from society. Now, some things still do apply,
Mhm.
as far as I will go into like law enforcement, or maybe um, the fire department.
Mhm.
And to an example of that, I talk about the physical readiness standard, or PRT, how they exercise.
Mhm.
Women have a different standard than men. And the reason this is because women are built different than men. That goes back to, we both going to run.
Mhm.
Both the women and the men have to run.
Mhm.
However, because of their physical makeup,
Mhm.
the Navy treats the women one way and they treat the men another way. Not to say that one is worse or better or this can do that. There's no dominance. The dominance is never mentioned in the military. Matter of fact, it's prohibited. You can't say you're better,
Mhm. Mhm.
but they're treated differently because of who we are. So the preparation, the Navy is giving us the preparation, to an extent, and just your common concepts. Now the world has changed to an extent over the past 50 years, but it hasn't. All of the hard labor that men did in the 60s and the 70s,
Mhm.
predominantly men do those same jobs now. When you're driving down the street, you look on the side of the road, they're doing construction, it's full of men.
Right.
There are very few females working there.
Mhm.
So understanding that, I got to teach my daughters to work and I teach my boys to work. However, I'm preparing my boys to work a jackhammer. I'm preparing my daughters to be veterinarians, or
Mhm.
something else that's more in their realm. So the Navy life, it's all the same. And the thing is, I set the terms because I am looking in the interest of the next generation. I don't care about society and how they view and what makes me feel better. And I don't get into the end of that.
Mhm.
I'm strictly in how you gonna live, how you gonna live in the world for you. So I
Yeah.
that's the military. I don't know.
Right, yeah. I just think about it, just keeps coming to mind when we talk about who you are and the ways what's based on some of the things you learned as a kid and the way your parents treated you, right? And as we translate that into who will our kids become, eh, you know, you modify your rules, or you know what I'm saying? Because the way you were raised, are you raising your kids that same way, or what would you say the difference is?
I think I am being I am we are, because I'm not about, please Lord, I'm not by myself. It's somebody else here with me with these children.
Mm-hmm.
Uh we are raising the children with the same amount of value. We are trying to anyway.
Okay.
We want them to, there's no easy way outs, no easy paydays. You got to work for it type
Mm-hmm.
of, hustle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the world is changing, so of course they're not going to be raised the same way.
Mm-hmm.
When I first left my mom's house and I joined the Navy, she had to write me letters
Right,
My
right,
son
right,
just joined the Navy. He has a cell phone. You know, we're
right.
constant communication. So the world has changed, and it's you grow up in the world that you're going to work in. You know, I
Mhm,
grew up in a world where I pulled out motors out of cars and I changed the tire at 16 and 15 and 14 and brake pads. I was working hands getting greasy. So when I got my 20s, we were still in a manual labor industrial time.
mhm,
Now we're moving way past the bounds of technology into the next generation. My kids may never drive, or my grandkids may never drive,
mm,
you know. Whereas in 2 generations ago in my family, they didn't have a car.
mhm,
So you raise for that time that you're going into. So are we trying to duplicate value? Yes. Me and my wife are definitely trying to duplicate value in our children, but
mhm.
the circumstances are changing, you know. So yeah, we're raising the same, but we're not raising the same.
Okay, I hear that. I understand that. I was just thinking about, you're right, with the way the world is now is so different. You will have to adjust to what's going on now. Um, when what I also was thinking about is in just talking to men and being with them and having them be able to come to the table to get support for mental health, right? How and since that's so important to me, what would you suggest are ways that we can get them to come to the table, and how could we go about like addressing their emotional intelligence, addressing, them, just even dealing with women and families.
So I think with, and this is just general for me with, and I think men with the men stepping up and getting into the role would definitely help.
Mhm.
We have to break down the walls that saying mental health it's so bad, it's taboo. You know what I'm saying? You know, at one point in time, it was looked frowned upon to go seek mental therapy health. You know, oh, you going to a psychologist, something wrong with you, or you crazy. You know, that's how we did people. Which we don't say that when you go to the podiatrist. We don't put that cliche on anybody where they go get checked out for anything else. But when they're saying you just want to get your mind together, we put a stigma on them. So first, men, we got to get out of the stigma of saying we mental health. Yeah, we scarred and we need to talk to somebody. You need to go through and work out your issues. Um, and I'll be the first to tell you, I don't do it enough. You know,
Mhm, mhm,
I've been to counseling a couple of times and I go and I counsel with my wife or my friends or my family and I vent with them and I take their feedback. But and that may work.
mhm,
Everybody needs to go seek some sort of therapy. You know, you
mhm,
may have that one friend who's your catharsis and they're
mhm,
great and they just sit there and you just run it off and talk. But
mhm,
everybody needs to break down the walls and get into their frame of mind and do some work. That
mhm,
has to be firsthand.
mhm,
And until we do that, we really can't come together because that's one of the things we're going to break down the stuff that we're holding on to. You
mhm,
know, a lot of people now they whoop their children every other day, and they have no idea why they got a whooping.
mhm.
They don't even know where whoopings came from. They just know that kid didn't do what I like. I'm going to get the belt. That's what it is.
Right.
That's a mental thing. You've been
Mhm,
scarred. You don't even realize it. You just
mhm,
think you're supposed to be beating on your kid.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
but we're not even prepared to acknowledge that that's a mental thing.
mhm,
See how far we're not even close to you being blind and touching something, not knowing what it is, and not realizing how big it is.
mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's interesting because I'm always thinking, so what do we do about this? So how can we do more of this, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of like I would say I hesitated because I'm thinking in my mind, television is not so much. You see a little bit more about come and get help. The video games are not. Maybe we'll make a video game about therapy, but nobody will buy it probably, right?
Mm-mm.
So once you blow up a few cars, go see the therapist or
Yeah.
something, right? But I'm saying, where will we get this message out to them that it's okay? And I hear what you're saying, because it took all these years for us to feel like therapy was not for us, right? So what is it going to take, right, to move to that place? And I can say I see the shift. And I guess because I deal with women, I see more of the shift in women than I would say I see with men, right? Because most of the women that I'm now talking to are like, yeah, get into the place of therapy's okay. Where do we start and how do we get this change to happen? What do you think?
Now that is a question, because in order to, I guess, to start to fix something, you got to realize something's wrong.
Yeah, you got to realize it's
I I think we're at that state. If you
mm,
look at numbers, I'm a numbers guy,
mm-hmm,
something's wrong.
mm,
When you look at us as people, how we're operating, something is wrong.
mm,
80% of us are divorced. Something's wrong.
mm,
You know, divorce rate 80%. You know, is going on. This, that, and third. Child pregnant. I mean, teenage pregnancy is rate, and gun violence is here, and suicides are there, and domestic violence are here. If men are not acknowledging that these ideas, they could change,
mm-hmm,
everything I just said, men could change.
mm,
Men could change the divorce rate. Men could change teenage pregnancy. Men could change suicide rates. Men could, and it's obvious because when we see men in places, these things aren't happening as often. And those numbers where we see the men are in place to do their job and play their role and be good husbands and be good fathers, we see a whole lot less teenage pregnancy, a whole lot less of the divorce rate on the rise. We see a whole lot less uh, domestic violence when men are in place to do their part. When we talk about solid, not just everybody is born of the male gender is not a man, but we talk about solid men that are in place. We don't see these problems. So
mm,
if you're a man right now and you don't feel that there's a problem in our community, in our world that you can't fix, then I question your manhood.
mm, mm,
So it has to. We the right. We don't need to go any further. We're already there. We're there right now. We're at
mm,
that point. You're saying, what is it going to take, or what do we need? We
mm,
here. It's in front of our faces.
mm,
You
mm,
know, the world as we know it. I mean, and not to say the world. The world could be a whole lot worse. I'm not
right.
saying it's just terrible, but the world could be a whole lot better
Mm-hmm.
if we put in some, you know, the necessary effort. We're talking
Mm,
about it, and you and I are talking, and a
mm-hmm.
couple of my friends are talking, and I'm pretty sure
Mm-hmm.
some guys in Kansas City talking. But
Right.
once again, we got to get out. We can't
Mm-hmm.
stay in the house and
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, say, okay, all right,
Right.
I'm doing my part, and that be that.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be more.
So, Tanya suggested sports commercials, having commercials at sports events and using sports events as a way to get the message out.
Thank you. Love you. I know her. This is the
Mm-hmm.
thing here. Sports are a distraction in our community. And I love sports. I've coached football. I've played for sports. I played baseball. I watch sports every day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But sports are intended to distract us in our
Mm,
community. You,
mm,
I worked in
mhm,
Hampton Roads for years in the shipbuilding industry,
mhm,
and every year I've worked in the shipbuilding industry without fail. When I go in on Monday, there is a Washington Redskins, Washington football team fan who can't even do their job because they discussing the game on Sunday. Sports are a distraction to what's really going on in life. I
Mhm.
love football. Please don't get rid of football. I
Yeah.
cherish football. But
Mhm.
the same amount of time we spend football, we got to spend at least a third of that time sitting with our kids at dinner and talking to them. You got to spend 30 minutes of that same amount of time and talk to your old lady. You got to spend 30 minutes of that time and get your own spiritual out the way. Because
Mhm.
the average game is 3 hours.
Mhm.
And I'm only asking for an hour and a half
Mhm.
somewhere in your day. We're not devising our time. We're caught up in other superficial things.
Mhm.
So I think it would be good. The message would be great because it's readily viewed. But sports is meant to distract. They're not going to give us anything. That's why it's called television programming. They're not going to give us anything to make us better. They're giving us television programming to keep us programmed, to keep us unproductive, to keep us in a certain state. And
Mhm.
nothing, love TV.
Right,
You
right,
talk
but
about
you,
the game. I love the
yeah,
game.
but it's interesting. Yeah, we talk about the game. It's interesting because for me, when you say sports is a distraction, a lot of things just whirl around in my mind, thinking about from the perspective of sports is one of the biggest financial um community
Yeah.
financial gains. As
Yes.
part of finance, sports is really big, and that's one of the places you can play sports and you can make some money, right?
Hmm.
And get a part of this. On the other hand, and so many black males aspire, even the fathers say go get the sports and it's like get the money. Then on the other hand, thinking about it as a distraction, right? um
So I'm sorry. Let me explain that. Okay, when we talk about sports as a tool, high school sports is not. It doesn't have any commercials. What it does is on ESPN. But typically, when I go to my children's high school football game, there are no commercials. That is an event. We're going out. I'm out with them. We got in the car. We drove across town. We went to whatever high school. We sat and watched the game. We are together. We're cheering. We're interacting. When
Mhm,
you watch a commercial,
mhm,
you're stagnant. You're locked. You're into that TV. You're not developing, unless the commercial is funny. We don't even talk to each other about the commercial, you know.
mhm.
No, when you're at the game, nobody talks about the Emu and Doug. Nobody. But
Mhm,
when you're sitting there and Emu and Doug, they are stealing valuable time. While the commercials would be great, that's not the agenda of sports. The agenda of sports is to keep us entertained at that time and keep us programmed there.
mhm.
That's
So we
why,
would have to be clever
yeah.
enough, right,
Mhm.
to be able to use sports. And I get why sports seems like a natural place to go because that's where the men are. That's where you can find them gathered around some sports, football, baseball, at some point. They are there. And so to be able to capture that audience, I think, is what the whole idea about the commercials or a way we took to capture them. But I hear what you're saying in terms of how it's all structured. And well, I remember, and I think about sports as a distraction too, because did you post this thing where you compare football to slavery? Do
I
you
have shared. I have
Yeah,
shared
right,
posts
you
like
have
that. About, yeah,
shared, right,
yeah.
yo, so, when you was like, "It's distracting," that just keep popping in my mind, right? Because we think about the structure of it football, and as I said, they're making the money, right? So the money is very different, but the whole idea of the structure of football and how it all works is the same. It's changing, I guess. Would I
Yeah.
say we have more general managers or black people
More
buying
coaches.
teams,
Yeah.
and right? More.
I,
Oh, but look at all the black boys who are now. Look at my sports now. I love sports too. Football. All the quarterbacks, right?
yeah.
At one
It is
point,
an
we
influx.
couldn't be
Yes.
a quarterback. At one point, we weren't intelligent enough to be
No.
the quarterback, right? And now, as you look at all the teams, it's like, oh wow, they got a black quarterback. I was like, oh, I didn't know they had a black quarterback. So you can see there the whole shift.
Yeah. I think the sports as a whole are a great team. It's I learned so much from playing sports growing up about commitment and dedication and teamwork and the physical training and even in the physical training you're focusing your mind because you have to focus more on your assignment versus how you feel.
Mm.
I just speak when it comes terms to when you watch an NFL game, when you watch your favorite NFL team, before anybody starts playing, the NFL comes on and say this is a broadcast of the National Football League. That's a show. They're not their primary purpose in that show is to keep you glued to that show. Now, if they broke and they gave time, like in the commercial, let's say, why would they give break and give their time? Because they making money. NFL makes a lot of money.
Mhm.
Why would they break and give their time to the development of anything other than football? They're not going to put on a commercial. That's what my point is. Football, yes, sports are great for the development of people.
Mhm. Mhm.
But as far as the broadcasting, the commercial setting,
Mhm.
the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, they not finna cut their money short so
Mhm.
that we can grow as a community.
Mhm.
They just need me to send my kids to high school to play football, and that's what this is all about.
Mhm.
So,
It,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think about, but the power of the players. I always think if you all y'all black out there, right? Why don't we have? Why don't they feel they have any power? Because there are more black people just come in and take the space. I don't understand that sometimes. If we
Well,
just say no, we have the power. Where can the change happen, or is there not enough of them willing to take a stand for?
now this is where football is like modern day slavery because Master said don't say nothing out of pocket. And the NFL owners, the commissioner, that's Master. I understand them. I what they going through as far as the physical rigors and what they have to mentally endure in order to get out there and play on Sunday and their athletic prowess. I think those are the greatest athletes ever. I love, like I said, I love football at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get out of high school, it's no longer football, just football. This is a business. Alabama and Georgia just played in the national championship. Both schools made 50 million apiece. Them kids didn't get none of that money. Them schools, you go on these campuses, the the the, the Jarvis Smith library is going up, and the
Mm-hmm.
Grenada Mason, all these buildings. You've been to major campuses. They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting that money doing science projects. They making that money through the NFL, through college football. That is a business. So in a business sense, those guys have to protect their interests. And you at the company, I'm at a company. I can't go out bad and just go against the company's motto. I got to stay in lines if I want to keep a job. So the players in the NFL, I think, while it may be in their heart and they have volunteer opportunities and certain chances where they can make an impact, and I think they are the best, doing the best they can. I give
Mm-hmm.
a lot of credit to those young men because they are trying.
Mm-hmm.
But
They are.
we just proved 4 years ago it ain't gonna go too far.
Mm-hmm.
They'll put a player out of the
Right.
NFL if he
Mm-hmm.
goes too far. And
Mm-hmm.
like once again, that's just not going to cater to their program. It's good business, and that's what they are, a business. The NFL, Major League Baseball, they're a business. They can't afford to sacrifice their business for the better of our community. The
Okay.
players, I think they doing better. The business as a whole, not a good idea.
Yeah. Mm. So the commercial thing wouldn't necessarily go over with them.
I don't think they would. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you
Right.
would. I think the players will support the players. The players will probably do a commercial and saying, "Hey, man, get out there and dads go and dads do this and husbands do that. Because they're husbands and fathers.
Right,
When you
right.
watch Hard Knocks, they always got a guy up there and he's spending time with his kids in his
Mhm.
training camp and his wife.
Mhm.
These are young husbands and fathers. We talk
Mhm.
about how many unmarried black men they are. Every show, they got a young man, 23, 24, 25, 26 years old, playing football, two kids, and a wife.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's examples out there, but
Yeah,
they
well,
can't.
we don't hear about the examples. We don't know about it.
No,
Remember
no,
when I
no.
was saying to you that I heard the other day this guy said that 74% of black women make under $50,000. I was like, what? My mind was blown, right? I was like, 74% make under, so, and we working our asses off hard,
Hard,
right?
hard work.
Hard working, right? And only 74% make, oh, 74, yeah. So that's kind of blows my mind when we look at, like, even when we're talking about financial the financials and understanding how to be financially free, or even understanding our finances, right? And that starts at a young age. I remember when Jasmine was young and I would give her her money, she would write it in a little journal and subtract how much she had from it. It's just, and that's this idea of being aware of how much money you have and thinking about finances starting early. And I think that money, as we say, plays a big role in everything. It's like, oh, well, money won't make you happy. We hear that all the time. I was like, no, but it sure would buy me a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I might be happy, right? 'Cause it's like a
No, they're gonna make you happy.
but I understand that, the happiness comes from within, because you'll just be buying and buying. But even to the point of financial literacy, I would call it, in the community, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding money. And I guess I think about one of my first jobs was teaching financial literacy for a youth build program, which was young black men, right? They wore me out, right? Because they didn't want to hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because their idea, where they came from, money was dealt with in a different way. And that they
Mm-hmm.
could count their money and everything, but it really wasn't about the long term haul, investments. What are you doing with the money? So I think that's one of the areas too that's very important. Financial literacy for being the best father and being the best husband that you can. I know you say your wife does your finances, but you do understand them, right? Or
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, 100%. Honestly, and the thing is, so as a husband, and I got this from an older gentleman. He would tell me about how he come home and he make money, get paid every Thursday or so, and he give his wife his entire check, and she would divvy up and pay bills and things like that. And some years on her birthday, that she could get a mink or a new Cadillac or whatever it may be. And
Mhm.
some years she couldn't. And she understood why. And this was him inadvertently, and I don't think he understood it for a long time. He was sharing, he was being vulnerable with her. He was opening up to, this is what I have. You can take full advantage of me and the
Mhm.
kids if you want to,
Mhm.
because that's happening. There are
Mhm.
some men who are coming home, they turn over their whole check, and nothing's happening with it. No food's there, lights getting cut off, all kinds of things are happening.
Mhm.
These are the stewards of being. I'm not saying that every husband has to give his wife his check. I'm not saying, but I'm saying that that's definitely not what I'm preaching. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is finances is an ideal that if you are a good husband, a good father, you are definitely sharing and trying to teach with your family. Okay, if you families are a business, and that's what we all need to understand. When you get married and have kids, that is a business. It's logistics involved. It's operations involved. It's training involved. Y'all are running a business.
Mhm.
You and your wife, the CEO, the CFO, whatever y'all call it. Me at this house, I'm the skipper, she the XO, and trust and believe she's in charge.
Mhm.
However, I'm the boss. I'm the King Smith, but my
Mhm.
wife is in charge.
Mhm. Mhm.
We have to learn that. That's something that we can't. We being a good husband. That's an example. You know, I can't. I can't speak or teach financial literacy to my wife and then go drinking and drink up all the check. You
Mm.
know, I can't. I can't
Mm.
speak financial literacy and buy motorcycle parts every week. You know, I have to think about that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Every father that I know that I talk to, at the end of their bills getting paid and whatever else thing they're going to do, they got $200 in their pocket that's burning a hole in their pocket that they will not spend
Mm.
because they're thinking of what's next. You
Mm.
know, I got tons of friends. They want another pair of shoes. They want some motorcycle parts. They want tattoos. They want. But they will not spend that money because they know that the washing machine may break. The
Mm.
kid may have to go on a field trip. Somebody
Mhm.
gonna bust out them shoes we just bought. You got kids. They you buy a pair of pants on Monday. They're too small on Wednesday. You
Mm.
as a father, if
Mhm.
you're in it, you're thinking of this is the financial literacy, you know,
Mm.
and it's inverted. You're not you don't we don't equate that. We don't put
Mhm.
that together. You know,
Mhm.
when we meet
Mhm.
that's not in our game plan. But
Mhm.
you have to be aware of that. It's not so much as a I'm crunching the numbers and I invested that much and this much. You might not
Mhm.
be able to invest.
Right.
You know, we men as a whole in this country don't come into their high earning group into their mid to late 40s.
Mm.
So for me, I got married at 29. Well, I couldn't invest at 29. I wasn't in my high earning bracket. You know, I had
Mm.
smaller kids. So I
Mm.
was buying formula and diapers. My household costs were higher and I made less money.
Mm.
Now, as I get older, I'm making more money and
Mhm.
my kids are leaving out the house, which alleviates the overhead in my house.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
gives room for greater financial literacy. When you learn how to budget with less, you know how to do better with more.
More. Mm.
So we that has to be understood, the business aspect and what men are getting to. You know, and I think a lot of men understand that. And the vicious cycle is we got men right now, they're not getting married because they understand that. Right now in our
Mm.
community, 54% of black men are not married and don't have any children.
54%. And why?
54%.
And you're saying why? What's with that 54% not married?
So I they there are a lot of young men in our communities, they are dedicated to being with women in our community.
Mm.
However, the women in our community, their ideal of the man that they want is not in alliance with what the men that young men want to be or the young men can be. You understand? Some guy's just born into the world and he's 5'8", and he ain't nothing
Mm.
he can do about that. And
Mm.
if you meet women and they say, oh, my man
No.
got to be
Mm.
6'2", well, then this guy is out of luck. There's nothing he can do about it. Okay?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I hear what you're saying. Right.
Some men, they don't, like I said, they don't make a lot of money. If you make 50,000, if you're a single man and you're 28 years old and you make $51,000 a year, you make a good living for yourself.
Mm.
Unfortunately, in my community, you don't make good enough living for a woman to want to be with you.
Mm.
But now understand this: if I make 51,000 and she makes how much did you say that
40. Let's say
40,000?
40. Mm-hmm.
If I make 51 and she makes 40 and we meet at 29, we can live a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Pretty good life.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not. That's the downfall of the generation before me because that father should have explained that to his sons and daughters. See, I'm
Mm.
saying it all rests with us. As the
Mhm.
father beforehand, the generation beforehand, the father felt, oh well, I pay the bills and I'm here and I
Mhm.
beat the kids when she say something. That's
Mhm.
not parenting. That's not
Mm.
parenting. Parenting is
Mhm.
instruction. You have to talk to your children. You have to give them things. You give them jewels because they got to go out in the world and represent you.
Mhm.
You know, and if they don't go out and fly, it's
Mhm.
failure. It's
Mm.
failure. If your children don't go out in the world and fly, it's considered failure.
Mm.
And the men are not, they're not stepping up and owning that. If you make a child and you don't, if you make a child and they stay, you failed.
Mm. Mm. It's interesting when I think about. Oh, wait a minute. Do you know what time it is?
Oh man.
What? Wait a minute. Wait. Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. I just looked up and I was like, oh, wait a minute. What time it is? I wanted to give you a chance to talk about some next steps and some of the things that you're going to do next.
Um, just like I said, we're going to continue, and I say we because there's a couple different gentlemen that's on the same thing. We're going to continue to try and reinforce and get this conversation going so that more men start to mentally embrace the ideal of manhood, so that we can move forward. And 2 lifetimes from now, hopefully, uh, we'll see that 54% down to 14%,
Mm, mm, mm.
or even 34%,
Mhm.
So
There's more marriages and more men and women coming together and creating community, bringing it all back to that.
exactly.
Cool. Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing you and hearing from you and the man and making it happen and supporting this whole new movement for the family, bringing back the family. And let's, 54%, all these women out there talking about they don't have men, right? I want to know what in the world, right? But thank you so much for coming in back again today and being my backup for me.
I
So
got you.
yeah, it's been really great, and I'll definitely be in touch.
Yes, ma'am. Love you.
All right, love you. Thank you for joining me here on Conversations with Reverend G. And you can find me here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. live on WEMS Radio. We're on Facebook and we're also on YouTube. And you can also find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. I hope you had a great evening with us today. And I would just like to say, live your best life with grace and ease. And I'll see you next week right here